the whole community, all shops, all social clubs, all whoever you want. So I think the best way to communicate that will be on the Facebook page. If you're not already there, how many people are following that now? It's like 200 or something like that. So if you're not already, please follow that, and hopefully we can grow this to something pretty great. So without further ado, no one's here to hear me. Sarah True.
Do we get the one that's I might get a little distracted. I love this so much.
Before we get to the interview with Sarah, I wanted to call out a few people in the room that have had a couple things interesting. One, Harvey had a nice profile on him in Upcoming magazine. If y'all haven't seen it, look it up. It's a really nice profile on him and his recovery from the armadillo assault and being able to qualify for Kona. Also wanted to congratulate Miss Caroline Duncan on her overall win in the 5K this weekend. Caroline is 12 and she won overall, not her age group, but she won overall. And before I introduce Sarah, I want to introduce and recognize her husband, who's here with us also. Ben True, right here, sitting up front, trying to be invisible. Some of y'all may have seen Ben running around town as some thin, really fast-looking guy that's running through the streets. Ben is also trying to qualify for the Olympics this year in the 5K and 10K, I believe. And he is, I'll give you just a little info on who he is. At Dartmouth University, he was an All-American in cross-country and track. And some sport they call Nordic skiing, which I think he made up because I've never heard of it. They don't do it in the South, it doesn't count. His 5K PR is a 13:02. So Caroline, he's in. I think we got a competition coming. That's 4:11 pace for those of you trying to do the math. His 10K time is 27:41, which is 4:27 pace, just for y'all trying to do the math. And his 5,000 time ranks him as the 9th fastest American in U.S. history. So he is also here in town, been training. If y'all would like, he'll be around for questions after if you don't want to. Now on to Sarah. Kind of got a fast couple going here. Sarah represented the U.S. at the 2012 Olympics in London, finishing 4th overall and one of the most exciting, dramatic finishes in the triathlon. This past fall, she won the World Triathlon Race in Stockholm. Correct. She is once again qualified for the U.S. Olympics, as you guys know, and will be racing in Rio this summer. She currently ranks 3rd in the world according to WTS, and has consistently been one of the top triathletes in the world over the last 6 to 8 years. If y'all look her up, you would probably mostly find her under Sarah Groff. When did you start becoming Sarah True?
Last year.
Last year. Congratulations. She also, which I thought was really interesting, graduated cum laude from Middlesbrough College in Vermont. And just this past weekend was named Rookie of the Year at the Winter Bike League. I verified that on the website just before I got here. Olympics, nothing.
WPL is hard.
So, with that, Sarah, where did you grow up, and where are you based now, other than training here now?
So I grew up in upstate New York, a small town called Cooperstown. If you know anything about baseball, Baseball Hall of Fame. I was a terrible baseball player, so stuck to individual sports. Kind of swam and ran and played all sorts of things, and didn't get into triathlon until college. So all these kids definitely have a head start on me. Yeah, and now I live in New Hampshire with Ben most of the year, but a lot of the year I'm off training and racing all over the world. So we have to be pretty organized with our schedules.
So what brought you guys to Athens? How'd y'all end up here?
Well, WBL. No, you think I'm joking. I'm actually serious. My sports psychologist I've been working with for a year, she went to Georgia and became a professional cyclist while she was enrolled in school, and has since gone on to get her doctorate, and we started working together. We were talking about places that Ben and I could drive to that aren't crazy far away, so it was like a 17-hour drive, which for us is reasonable. We have a big dog, so we wanted to make sure he could come with us. And just a place where it's a good community, it's a good active community with good weather, which is a big plus. And to be able to have people to ride with and some good facilities, so it kind of checked all the boxes, and yeah, that's why we're here.
That's awesome.
And barbecue.
We'll never be able to hear the end of it from David Crow now. WBL brings Olympians. So what is your sports background prior to triathlon, and is your family athletic?
Yeah, so I'm the youngest of three, and I think that's really good, because if you have older siblings, you always want to kind of try to beat them. My sister's 3 years older, and she actually started swimming before me, and came home after joining the swim team. The first thing she said is, "Sarah is not allowed to join the swim team." Of course, I had no interest in swimming until that moment. It was my goal in life to beat my big sister. And at a certain point, I ended up being a better athlete, and she started focusing on other things. I won't say it's related, but in my mind it is. She's pretty good at what she does too.
She's a writer.
She's a writer, yeah.
I've seen her name listed a lot. So how did you get into triathlon?
I just liked sports. I liked doing all sorts of things, and I couldn't really, decide on one. And I had done a couple in college. I swam in college, but I only swam a few months out of the year. The rest of the year I was hiking and running and riding a bike and just really active, and graduated realizing that I still, felt like I had this competitive energy, as everybody in this room feels, because we wouldn't be doing triathlon otherwise. I just wanted to channel it somehow. Didn't want to get a real job. I've done a couple of triathlons. Maybe I can, see if I can become a pro, which in hindsight is absolutely nuts. I can't believe that I thought, let's take a gander at this. I gave myself a 2-year window where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do the part-time job thing, scrape by this, pro triathlon thing, see if it'll work. And at the end of those 2 years, I realized that I had enough promise to maybe keep on going, and here I am still doing it years later. I won't tell you how many years, because it'll take years later.
So what was that first triathlon? Were you just killer, blowing everybody out of the water?
No. I borrowed a bike.
Your helmet's on backwards.
Not that. So the advantage of being a swimmer is that you get out of the water and you're feeling pretty good about yourself. But then I got on the bike, which was a borrowed bike from my brother. And it was probably a size 48 bike. It was this old bike. I'm 52, it may have been a 46. I swear, the knees were touching the handlebars. It was down tube shifting. You guys don't know what that is, but the rest of us know what down tube shifting is. I didn't know how to shift gears. There was this little rise where I was in the hardest gear, and people were riding by some old lady who's like, "No, you have to move that lever." I'm like, "I can't do it." Got onto the run, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is the most excruciating thing of all time." I thought I knew how to run. I don't know how to run. My legs are just destroyed, and I got done. I'm like, I'm terrible at this, but I love it. And I think that's probably most people's experience with their first triathlon. They're like, this was awful, but still, I want to come back for more. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I did not win.
Needless
to say.
At what point did you see that you could become a pro? You kind of touched on that just a little bit, and then when did that kind of transition to a possibility of being an Olympian?
So I didn't really probably consider myself a pro. So it's interesting. So Ben and I are very different ends of the spectrum, where he grew up knowing that he was going to be a professional athlete. It was just something in him and totally innate. Like, he knew he would graduate from school, that would be what he is. I still can't believe that I'm a professional. Like, people ask me what I do, I have to kind of stop for a second. I don't know at what point. I don't know. I guess
Just keep on going.
now, I just realized. Yeah, you just kind of keep on going and you realize, well, you know, when was filing my taxes, and I was above the poverty level, like, now I'm pro. List your profession and I could write it with confidence. That moment.
So where did that transition to realizing you could become the possibility of being an Olympian?
So 2008, I went into it thinking, I just want to qualify for Olympic trials, I just want to be in the mix, and basically the last race came down to me and another woman, Sarah Haskins, who ended up making the team. But at that point, you know, a couple months before, if you had asked me, I would be fighting for an Olympic spot, I would have just told you I would have been happy to go to trials. So that was kind of a moment that woke me up and said, wait a second, I just missed the Olympic team. I didn't even think of myself as being capable. So, like, okay, I have 4 years to wrap my head around the fact that I can be an Olympian. And kind of the same thing happened with the medals in London. So I went into 2012 thinking, well, you know, I'm an Olympian. I get to race at the Olympics. I never in my preparation was I thinking, okay, I'm going to go there and fight for a medal. Until I ended up fourth, and I'm like, maybe I should have thought about fighting for that. Racing's not magic. You don't just show up and like magical things happen. You have to be mentally and physically prepared for it. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. Like, you watch these movies and like things just happen. Fortunately, real life doesn't just happen. So yeah, I've had 4 years to think of myself as a medalist. So hopefully I can do that.
Well, that kind of touches on my next question, which was how does and you just talked about mentioned your sports psychologist was the one that got you down here. How is your mental preparation for these Rio games different than the way you were preparing for London?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just, you know, that self-belief that I genuinely believe on the right day, if my preparation goes well, I can win an Olympic medal. If you told me that a few years ago, I would have told you you're crazy. But I think, that's half the battle, is just, you know, setting the bar high. If I can't do it, if other people are better on the day, I can't do anything about that. But what I can control is the process from here until, August 20th, whenever it is, around that time, then, just being the best that I can be on that day. And that's totally different than I was going into the last Olympics, where it's just, wow, this is so cool, I get all this free stuff, and like, yeah, I get to meet all these cool people, and I'm like, no, you know, I'm going to be there, and I'm going to be there to fight for a medal.
So as you mentioned, you and Ben contrast, is that being a spouse, does that help? And that his approach is so, or at least was so completely different from yours?
Did he rub off on me?
Uh-huh.
In only the good way. No, I think there's something about that. So after London, you know, it's really normal for athletes, and I'm sure a lot of people, like, if you've done an Ironman, you get kind of this down period afterwards, where it's just, now what? And I had a few hard months, and I just felt like I'd let myself down a little bit. And I think Ben was really good at kind of putting it back into perspective and just saying, wait a second, you were just fourth at the Olympics. Think about, you know, just put into perspective, you know, this is a really incredible achievement. And I think what is good about being an athlete couple is we can provide that other side where, I think we're just inherently pretty tough critics of ourselves, but just to have somebody else say, let's step back, let's look at the reality, and it's probably not as dismal as we think.
Well, and some people, maybe a lot of people in the room might not remember 2012. I do in that race, and then went back and looked at some of that again. Why don't you give them, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
just tell them a little bit about at least how that race shaped up. And when you say fourth place, it was also quite dramatic fourth place.
Yeah, so basically the race, not much happened until the run. And we got off the bike, and there was a large group of women, and it was kind of a race of attrition, where one by one, people would be dropped. And at one point, halfway through the race, I was one of those women dropped. But I kind of kept my head down. More women are dropped, and I would pass them. And I ended up running back up to the main group, which was a pretty small group. A couple more women dropped off the pace, and I looked around. About 800 meters to go. There are 4 of us. One of us is not going to get a medal. That is the wrong thing to be thinking at that time, by the way. If anybody's in that situation, that is the wrong thing to be thinking, because I ended up being that person. And it just shows that people talk about fortune telling, like sports psychologists. You don't think down the road. You don't think about what's going to happen at that point 800 meters from now. You think about what's happening right now. And I got a little bit too caught up in, oh my goodness, this is the Olympic Games and I'm 1-4 with, only a few more minutes to go. And they just put in a surge at the end, and I was in La La Land or something, I don't know. But yeah, that was pretty much the race. But the fact that I was able to bridge back up to the group, I didn't realize at the time that normally that just doesn't happen that often in races, especially at that level. So it's kind of special to be in that position to have fought back up.
Oh yeah, you were in the Olympics.
Yeah.
The rest of us here are going, you were in the Olympics.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would have been in La La Land, right?
Yeah. Pretty crazy.
So give us a window into a typical training week or day for you. I mean, you've got a couple here that are both pro athletes, and the rest of us can't relate or understand that. So what is a day for you, or a week for you while you're here now?
So we have very different schedules, but I'll let Ben tell his schedule. Basically, he runs really fast, but the rest of the time, there's a lot of lounging involved. Triathlon, as you know, not as much lounging because you have 3 sports, and I swear I'm not better. Not at all. No. Seriously. So I swim, 5 times a week. I've been swimming with Haley Chura, and some of you guys may have come to her talk, and she has been amazing. I mean, she's such an amazing swimmer. And she's also an amazing talker. So she keeps me entertained while we're swimming hard.
Can she talk while she's in the water?
Sometimes. It's like, I hear these bubbles, and I'm like, Haley, come on. I know this is easy for you. I ride, so basically I'll probably train about 25 hours a week. You break that into 3 sports, and there's a lot of showering, there's a lot of snacking. We eat a lot, we sleep a lot. Yeah, I mean, it really varies on the day. I try to get in a couple hard bikes and a couple hard runs a week, and then my couple hard swims with Haley, and then just the rest is kind of just support training, making sure that I'm ready for those big sessions.
So how does, I got 3 topics that are under that. How does nutrition, recovery, and then basically working to stay injury-free a big fall under what you're doing? So I think that's something that a lot of age groupers have a tendency to overtrain. Probably all of us in the room have been guilty of that at some point. How does somebody that has your entire focus is nothing but that, not be tempted to go, I think I could go out and do another run, I could squeeze another one in?
Yeah, I think biggest thing is focus on your workouts. So people like to use workouts for any training session that you do, but you'll have a few key sessions that are hard per week. And that should be your focus, because those are the ones where you get the most gains. You know, those are the hard bikes, the hard swims, but you can't do that every day, especially not if you have a job and family and other demands. So it's really kind of working back from there and saying, okay, this is what's important, these few sessions. The other ones are just, they're good for overall conditioning, but make sure they're easy enough to be able to support going hard when you want to go hard. I think it's a huge, huge temptation that every time you go out, you're going kind of strong, but it just means that you're not recovering properly. You're always kind of going hard. You show up to do your hard workouts and you can't do what you need to do to be able to get the stimulus that you're trying to get out of the workout. So it's, I think, do less, make sure your easy's easy, and then just really focus on a few key sessions a week. One of the things that with age, I've realized that I can't do as much what some people might call garbage mileage. So I have to be really, really careful about, okay, I can only run this much per week if I'm doing these 3 hard sessions. I'm totally okay, you know, running just short, easy the other days, because I know that these are the important ones, and that everything else is just kind of to support the important workouts.
So where does something like the Winter Bike League,
Yeah.
you said brought you in,
Yeah.
where does something like that fall under? I mean, those are typically 80 to 100 mile rides, and there's a lot of sprint stuff in
Yeah,
there. So
yeah.
I assume part of that for you, when the way you race, is there's a lot of pack riding.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably some bike handling skills in there too. But that's a pretty intense.
That's my
session.
recovery day. That is not my recovery day. No, it's a key session. But you know, one of the great things is nobody cares in the Winter Bike League what else you've been doing. So I come from a squad environment with triathletes where they're like, oh, we're so tired. I can't believe we did that track session yesterday. Okay, I show up Winter Bike League. Nobody cares that I did a track session the night before. So it's up to me to kind of manage my own energy, to be a responsible athlete and get what I need to get out of it. Like, being in a group and training with other people is great as long as you can keep your ego in check. And that's been something that, you know, it's most people can learn from. I'm still learning.
Is that, you mentioned Ben just a little bit ago, and Ben, I hope you don't mind me calling you out a little bit, is you have a reputation sort of as being the lone wolf in the way you train. And I don't know if you have something you want to add to that, as far as I've read a couple interviews about you where you talk about the problem with training with others sometimes, because it kind of, you end up going along their work schedule.
Yeah, I mean, training is so individual that what works for one person doesn't work for everybody. And what one person can handle, not everybody can handle. And so I found that I'm an extremely competitive person. Sarah can attest to that. And so the few times that I have really trained with a group, I wouldn't necessarily do what I personally needed. I would a lot of times run a little bit harder because other people in the group were running harder. And so I wasn't able to recover fully in between. And I wasn't able to do exactly what my body needed on that particular day. And so training alone, where that has definite negatives, because it's a whole lot more tiring to train by yourself and a lot more mentally demanding. But it's allowed me that when I wake up in the morning, first, I have the luxury that as a runner you can't really do that many hours of training because running is so destructive to the body. And so I have the luxury that I run at most twice a day. And so I can sleep to my body. I don't have to wake up to an alarm clock. I can sleep to when my body and so then I can go out and do my workout. And if my body isn't feeling recovered, I can push my workout back, or I can make those adjustments. If I'm running on an easy recovery run, recovery, in my opinion, is the only point of going out for a recovery run is to allow the body to get the muscles moving again, get the blood flowing again, get a little bit more of the neurological pathways going, but really just all setting yourself up for the workout each time of the week. And so, you know, if I'm feeling good, maybe I'll run 5:30 pace. If I'm feeling bad, maybe I'll run 7:30 pace. But it's completely up to me depending on how my body is. And then same with the workout. I have an interesting relationship with my coach where instead of him telling me what to do, we kind of just talk back and forth, but I definitely have the last say, and I will adjust workouts according to how I feel like would be best for me. So he will suggest something, and on a given day that might be good. On another given day I might feel like I can do more or I can go faster. Other days I can feel like because of how my body is, I have to do less or I have to go slower. By training by myself, I can make the adjustments a lot easier and really do what I need to do.
Thanks. Ben's on Strava, if any of y'all ever want to follow him these days. I like it. It says, I think the headline is "There are no secrets." Something like that.
So one of the great things about training in this day and age is that we have technology, which is really nice because you know exactly what you're doing. But I think there's also a danger. Ben kind of talked about that, where he's able to go out and just, it's an easy run. What his body perceives as easy, it doesn't matter what the pace is. And I have a really hard time with that. Where he'll call me out and be like, I just saw you check your watch for your pace like 5 times the last minute. Normally it's when he's blowing by me and like see me from half a mile away and see every time I look. But I think probably all of us in this room who use data, whether it's watts, whether it's pace on your watch, you're not listening to your body, you're getting caught up in, you know, I have to run a certain pace, I have to do a certain distance. Same thing with like, if you have a coach and you have it on your schedule that you have to do X, Y, or Z, you're going to stick to that even though it might not be the best thing for your body. So this is something that I still struggle with, where Ben's okay, like today he took a day off because that's what his body needed. I had something on the schedule and I'm like, I have to do it, it's on the schedule. Look, there's nothing magic about what's on the schedule. It's, can your body handle it on the day? Like today I needed to adjust my workload, but I get it, it's hard because I can relate to that. That's something that's definitely, you know, something to keep in mind is you have to really kind of check in with yourself and your own fatigue levels, kind of ignore the numbers. The numbers are there, look at them afterwards. Don't look at them, you know, if you're fixated on what your watts are in the present moment, it's not going to help you as much as if you just, it's there, it's a tool, but it's not a guiding force.
Great advice. Have you ever dealt with a serious injury setback? And if so, how did you handle that, both mentally and physically?
Not well. No, I'm learning. You know, my biggest injury was in 2010. I crashed on the bike, and it was just a really slow speed, like commuting to swimming kind of crash, where nothing should have happened, but I fractured my sacrum. At the time, I didn't know I fractured my sacrum. We thought I actually fractured my tailbone, and I got a cab ride to the emergency room because all my training partners and my coach had a training session and they couldn't take me. And the entire time I'm like perched up against the dashboard, and this cabbie's just laughing at me with every bump, and I'm like crying, tears are coming down my face. It was a horrible experience. And then, like, you know, you get the blow-up cushion thing. I was sitting on the blow-up cushion for a few weeks. Tried to race, and actually raced on it the next weekend on my coach's borrowed bike, which had downshift shifting, and was the wrong size. But continued to try to race and train through it because the orthopedist told me it was okay. Everybody was telling me it was okay. They told me, you know, like, pain's your guide, but unfortunately with athletes, you know, you don't really use that. pain as your guide. Basically, my body learned to kind of lock down and spasm whenever I was doing anything hard. So it was just this cycle where finally, like, got through the year, was riding my cyclocross bike, just kind of, again, really no low speed impacts, and got up and I couldn't walk. And this was after a year of just frustration, and got it scanned, and like, oh, it never healed. So I basically lost an entire year because I didn't take time off. That's, if you have an injury, especially fracture, take time off. What I wouldn't give to have taken, because at that point I had to take like 2.5 months basically without running. What I wouldn't give to have just done it right the first time, and you know, yeah, you learn.
Even Olympians.
Oh
Super
yeah. Well, we're stubborn, which is good because stubbornness gets you ahead, but it also can be, definitely be a detriment. Yeah.
So, stepping back to, or forward to Rio, you've got however many months it is from here now. How do you build up to that, and how do you not overshoot? In other words, get so anxious that you're peaking 2 months from now,
Yeah.
or kind of getting lethargic, not coming to the race. So how do you build it toward Rio?
Patience, maturity. I tend to be kind of a late peaker with the race schedule, so that as long as I can kind of hold myself back in the beginning part of the year, hopefully I'll hit it right. And one of the good things about racing for years is that you learn how to kind of peak right. But it's hard. I mean, the last time around with London, looking at basically at the start, looking around at my peers and realizing that, you know, quite a number of them at that point were battling injury or sickness, or they had lost too much weight and it, you know, just affected their power, and just realizing that people pushed it way too hard. Sometimes you're better off at 90%, 80% than like trying to find where the limit is and going over, because if you go over, it's a lot harder to get back. Yeah.
Do you think that's because of the pressure of the event?
Pressure of the Olympics, yeah. People think that they have to do something special because it's the Olympics, but really, you just need to replicate what you've been doing for years. And maybe with just greater focus, but you keep it within the realm of what's familiar to you. Yeah.
We haven't talked about, one of the things Sarah had said she wanted to do was talk a little bit here about her career and what she's done, but also to give y'all some advice. We're kind of going to just let you kind of roll with that now. But one of the things we haven't asked about is, I was going to ask you about, you're talking about some of this planning, but you haven't mentioned a coach. So I don't know who you deal with in coaching and how that plays into what you're heading into Rio, and if other people you think, amateur athletes need coaches too.
Yeah.
And then I'll let you talk about
Yeah.
that.
I think if you can have a coach, it's great, because most people in the sport, I find, are almost too dedicated and need to be held back. And just to have a voice of reason to say, you know, you have a job, you have kids, you can't train like a professional, this is what you can do. And that's honestly, like, most of coaching, I think, is holding people who are really keen and love their sport back a little bit so that they can perform well. Just a voice of reason. Then sometimes my voice of reason, but I do have people who are that for me. So for years I've done a whole squad environment, which is great because you're around other athletes. It's a fun, exciting environment, but I realized that what I was giving up on the coaching side, so I didn't feel like my program was structured for me, it was structured for the entire group. You know, it was a trade-off for me. It was having that camaraderie, having the day in, day out, you know, stimulus of people around you, but what I was giving up was kind of that individual approach. So what I've done basically this year is I'm doing a lot more training alone, but I have a program that's just for me. You know, it makes me feel pretty special. Yeah.
So who is that?
Yeah.
Where is your coach? Who is that?
So it's basically Team Sarah, because it sounds really complicated, and I do not recommend this method unless like you're pretty confident in being able to give feedback. But I now have somebody who's helping write some sessions. I have Ben's run coach is now helping me write run sessions. And I have a cycling coach who's also a physiologist who handles the general program, the overview. So he's looking at, I mean, triathlon is so much about energy management. It's looking at, all right, I have this much energy each day. This is what I can dedicate time-wise and energy-wise to my training to make sure that I can stay healthy, that I can continue to do my work, that I can continue to do the training without making my family crazy. Although Ben still gets a little crazy when I'm a little bit overtired. But yeah, so it's having a coach is somebody who really is able to look at the global perspective and be able to tell you, all right, this is what you can handle right now. This is what we'll give you, and we'll adjust it. It always should be a back and forth about, I don't feel like I'm getting enough of this or that. Yeah, it's a relationship. It's a relationship.
So you don't have one specific coach that you're working with, you have a group, a team that you
Yeah,
work with.
I'm a team.
Before we open it up to Q&A from the audience, are there some areas you want to cover from triathlon advice, triathlon do's, don'ts, nutrition?
That's so general.
It is general. Questions may cover some of that, but I
Yeah.
didn't know anything specific.
For years, I hadn't really worked with a sports nutritionist, and one of the biggest things for me, recovery-wise, has been, and I've noticed a big difference, is just making sure within that 30-minute window, having some protein and some carbohydrates after a hard workout. Anything an hour or less, you're okay not doing that. But if it's a 3-hour ride, you have to stay on top of your calories. If you do a hard run session, making sure you get some protein, some carbohydrates within that window. I was really bad about it before, and I've gotten a lot more dialed in with that, and I've actually noticed a big difference in my ability to recover from hard sessions. So
nutrition's been key here.
nutrition's been good, yeah, it's been key.
Before we
You
go
said
to
that too, Kirk, didn't you?
do what?
You said that too, that was important too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I just figured that the
Yeah.
Olympic level, it makes it
Yeah.
even.
It's pretty simple, but it gets complicated. Another thing I would say is be very skeptical when it comes to trends, because our sport is very trendy. Like, we love trends, whether it's the gluten-free craze, or you have to wear compression underwear. Like, honestly, I don't think they're compression underwear, but just being, I think it's healthy to have a decent amount of skepticism. Just because everybody is moving in a certain direction doesn't mean you necessarily should. Read studies, look at evidence, just don't buy in right away because everybody else is doing it. Our sport is notorious for that.
All right, guys, before we open it up to the floor, I had one other question, and it was, if you had a rapper name, what would it be?
Okay.
That one comes from Jen Fleming.
Yep, that's an excellent question. I think my rap career would have been a two-part. In the first one, I'd be DJ Graffy, but now it's a collaborative effort, and we're the Two True Crew. Old school hip hop, of course. None of this new school stuff.
All right, I'm gonna open up the floor. We got some kids here that I know might have some questions, and there's
You can
probably
ask
some
Ben
others.
questions too.
And you can ask Ben questions too.
He pretends like he's shy, but he's a talker.
Yeah, I'm just curious, and I'm obviously not asking about numbers, but what kind of support do you get from USOC versus USA Triathlon and that type of thing? How do they support you with your Olympic effort and that type of thing?
The biggest thing and this is absolutely critical, is getting to races. Because if, I don't know if you've looked at the ITU calendar, but for example, my next block of racing, I go from here to Abu Dhabi to Australia to South Africa. If you can imagine me doing that on my own dime, like, our prize money's not that good. So I would come back, you know, with moths in my pocket, basically. So that's the biggest thing, is it means that I can actually bring home prize money and not just be out before I even, you know, start a race. So that's the biggest thing.
And so do they support you coming there and that type of thing?
So I've reached the point, you know, results-wise, where they'll take care of my travel. That's huge.
And that's USOC or is
That's USA Triathlon.
USA Triathlon?
But it's through the USOC.
I got
So very little of the money for elites actually comes from USA Triathlon directly. It comes from the USOC.
Gotcha.
So it's, yeah, the breakdown's pretty interesting. But then because it's an Olympic year, we also get USOC support. So a little bit of a stipend each month that makes sure that, you know, we can cover massage, we can cover, you know, some basic living expenses. So it's,
Do you have access to their facilities or whatever? I mean, do you take advantage of that?
Yeah, I have in the past.
As far as testing and all that kind of stuff?
So when I was injured and bouncing back from the sacral fracture, I lived, you know, in Colorado Springs for a few months, and I was getting treatment every day, and I was using their facilities. You know, if I lived in Colorado, I'd probably use it a lot. It's just, we live in New Hampshire, so it's a little far. Yeah.
Tom mentioned that. What is your schedule from now on? Is it just competing in triathlons, or is there a gathering of the U.S. Olympic triathletes 2 months before, or anything like that?
And so what's pretty cool is that we actually end up being kind of a community of racers, where when we go to the Olympics, we've raced all those people before, time and time again. So I'll probably do like 6 races in the lead up, and they're all over the world. And it, you know, to kind of get that balance between a little bit of racing, a little bit of training, a little bit of time at home.
When will you be in Rio? I mean, like 3 weeks before?
A week before.
A week?
Yeah. Although the more and more news coming out, it might be even less.
That's another question.
Do you have any concern about that?
Yeah, of course. You know, it's not London.
No.
When you go to Brazil, there are certain challenges. They have a lot of work to do before it's ready for the Olympics. Yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting. I'll let you know.
Back when the Olympics, many decades ago, it was in Mexico City. Because of the altitude, the athletes tried to get there earlier because that became a major problem. Which the climate in London must have been a challenge too. You're from the
Oh, yeah.
big
Yeah.
deal.
That was
Always
tropical.
parades, always wet. But Rio, aren't you going to be at high huck? You're going to be closer to the ocean or at high?
So
They have both climates.
it's pretty temperate, and because it's winter, because it's the southern hemisphere, so you kids know this, right? It's winter time, even though it's the summer. Wait a second. But it's actually pretty temperate. It'll be a bit warmer, but my lead up to the Olympics, I'll actually go to altitude. You're mentioning altitude before. Flagstaff, Arizona.
Okay, so you'll be training in an equal or comparable condition.
It's actually pretty cool up there, but it's about 7,000 feet, and really the idea is to get your red blood cell count up. For me, I know it's really good. I respond really well to altitude. Ben responds horribly. So in the event that we both are going to the Olympics, we probably won't see each other for 6 weeks in the lead up, and then we'll just see each other from across the village and wave. Hey, I remember you. Yeah, so we, every athlete's really individual. So for me, it's a huge, I do really well off of altitude, and I'll do that. Yeah. Yeah.
What do you look for?
You should ask Ben this question, because his answer is funny. I eat some, like some scrambled eggs and some white rice, and I have some coffee. It's not very exciting, but bland. I can digest it. The protein and fat from the eggs keeps me from getting hungry. Make sure I'm nice and full. Ben's answer is very different.
So, I burn very hot, and what I mean by that is I use a lot of energy when I exercise, and so I need to eat a lot of calories to keep me going. And so I am not one that eats like a bird leading to a race. Usually, depending on what the race is, for me, road races tend to be early in the morning, track races are late at night. And so I usually eat a very large meal about 4 hours before the race. The one that has gotten me some notoriety is my breakfast before a road race, which I typically eat 6 bagels. A few of them with peanut butter, and usually a banana. And I'll wake up 4 hours before the race, and I'll constantly be eating that. And my philosophy behind it is that when you run, and there's no scientific when you run and you just fill up your stomach a little bit, it kind of sloshes around, you get that terrible feeling. But then you're perfectly fine.
I don't recommend that. He'll also complain about it's getting really hard to chew. Like, yeah, you just ate half of it.
Really not good for the TMJ, is it?
Maybe it just opens up the jaw a little bit. That's a good idea.
How long do you sit on the toilet after
No, I burn very hot, and if I don't, usually like a track race, I'll have the few races that Sarah has come with me for. She'll have to order multiple meals to bring me to eat before, because I will eat, like a pound of pasta with some chicken.
But pretty bland again.
Yeah,
Like,
4 hours
maybe
before.
some
So
tomato sauce, but
if I don't eat enough, I'll feel the nerves.
and the stomach walls,
Yeah.
We've often heard, go fast when you're supposed to go fast.
Yeah.
Go slow when you need to go slow. What kind of differential does that mean for you all? I know you said something about 5:30 versus 7:30. An age grouper, we're not doing 5:30, 7:30. What would you say would be the difference for somebody like me? I'm doing, say, a half marathon distance. If I'm doing I normally run an 8:30 pace for a half marathon. What would you say would be a nice, easy day type pace?
So for me, I go only off the effort.
Okay.
So your body has no idea pace, right? Your body doesn't know if it's running a 6-minute mile, it doesn't know if it's running an 8-minute mile, it doesn't know if it's running a 12-minute mile. It only knows how fast your cadence is, how much your leg's turning over, and the effort, right? And so from one day to the next, your pace can be different. I like to say, on an easy day, you should feel like you're holding yourself back. You should feel like you're running along, you're having fun, nothing is hurting, and you should feel like you are actively holding yourself back. On harder days, you're actively pushing, right? And on harder days, depending on what you're trying to do with a harder session, there could be a whole range of things, whether you want to try to hit, like a threshold, or if you want to hit like a VO2 max, there's different things. But usually, for an easy run for me, a recovery run, I'm actively holding myself back. For a normal maintenance run, I may allow myself just to run how I feel. But it's usually either, I never on an easy run think about running fast. I never think about pace. If I think of anything, I'm thinking about actively slowing myself down.
Thank
What's your favorite post-race binge food?
I like burgers. Post-race burgers. You don't really do.
No, I'm usually sick of any break product. And so I'll just try to eat burgers, nice because it's mostly meat, but I'll try to eat anything but break products.
I've done a triathlon before. I want to do another one. And do you have any advice for the whole, I don't want to do this, I can do it tomorrow, that kind of thing?
You know,
That's a good question.
I don't know if Ben ever feels this way, but probably half the races I do, that split second before the gun goes off, it's, I can't believe I'm doing this. What am I thinking? What am I thinking? This is going to be so horrible and hurt so much. But then it goes off and you're fine. You have to realize it's really normal. It's really normal to be nervous before a race. It means that you care. I think if the races where you show up and you couldn't care less, you know, that's probably the time that maybe you have to think about whether or not you should be racing, you know, whether or not you really like triathlon. But I think if you feel that way, it shows that you're really, you're interested and you want to do well. And I think that's totally normal.
Like when you
You're talking about the training.
Training. Oh, I guess you have to figure out what you like about training. What kind of things are fun for you. So I think probably being in a group makes it a lot easier. When I was coming up, I really loved training with other people because then it's just more like playtime, hanging out with your friends, running. But I think, yeah, there are days where you're not going to like it very much. I mean, there are days where it feels like work, but you know it's going to pay off when you get to the race. So you just have to know there are going to be days where it's really easy and fun. There are days that it's a little harder, and you have to just remind yourself that I'm doing this for a reason. And the reason is I can get through my first triathlon. Oh, we haven't addressed this. This section's quiet. Yeah.
I've seen that you compete a little bit with cyclocross. How aggressively do a little bit?
Very well.
How aggressively do you approach that sport?
Not at all.
Just a fun side hobby?
It's my off season. So it's actually really, I get embarrassed when Ben comes to races because I'm like, I haven't been training, I'm not fit, like he's used to watching me do well, and it's so out of my wheelhouse. Like, I'm not comfortable doing cyclocross, but I love it because it's hard, it gets your heart rate up, it's a challenge. I'm not good at it, which is why I like it, because there's no pressure. Yeah, it's a good way to kind of get back in shape and have fun riding bikes. You know? It's awesome. I recommend it to everybody. Do some cyclocross. So much fun. It's basically adult obstacle course. Like, that's really the way to describe it. Yeah.
What's your favorite event?
The second I cross the finish line. No. I guess it depends on the day and the course. The run, because it's last, that's normally where the race gets decided for us, so I think that's probably the most exciting. Yeah. But I'm also the most tired then, so I don't know. Yeah.
After Rio this summer, do you think that you could move into like long distance?
I think I'm going to try some, yeah. Yeah, I've done some halves in the past, and I did it pretty well with them. It's just, they're long. They're really long. And credit to anybody who's done an Ironman. It's a long day. It's a long day. So I also have to get this one on board, you know, like, no, that's part of, if you're in a couple and you decide to do Ironman, you better make sure that your spouse is on board with you. So we have to have that discussion, maybe a few months from now. Yes?
So I saw one of your talks, I think you called it pre-habbing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really interested in that because I think I have more injuries than years that I've raced, and they're all running related.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to do like warm-ups and things that you talked about, but I never know what to do. And when I research it, there's one study that says, hey, you should do this. And then there's 3 that say, don't do that because it'll be a cripple if you do that too much. So, I don't know, any more detail or resources where I can find out like what to do specifically?
Foam roller. Everybody should have a foam roller. Like, hit that bad boy up as much as you can. Okay, you could probably go overboard, right? Yeah, you can go overboard with anything, but a foam roller is amazing. Especially, like, most people can't get massage, once a week, but you can get a lot of the benefits with foam roller.
Most injuries are one of 2 things really stemming from one thing, which is a weakness somewhere, muscular weakness somewhere, right? And so usually what happens is something gets weak. It could be because it is overworked, or just because it could be weak to begin with in tires, and so then other chain events, because your body is so plastic, so great at figuring ways to keep you moving, that if one muscle starts not firing correctly, other muscles will start engaging and allow you to continue doing it, but they're not made for that, and so they're going to be worn out and they're going to compensate. So one of the biggest things, and I don't recommend it for young people, but for adults, one of the biggest things you can do is actually go into the weight room and do strength training. You don't have to do heavy weight, but becoming a more balanced athlete as a whole and doing a few fundamental weight exercises really helps in combating injuries because it strengthens your entire body as a whole, and so it limits those weaknesses. For kids, for younger people, the best thing to do is do as many different sports as possible. And that basically does the same thing as allowing your body to constantly be doing other stimuluses, and that helps your body get all the strength and be able to build a stronger body. And that's the number one most important thing.
I mean, you think about running, it's one plane, it's basically one movement over and over again. I mean, kids, you guys do other sports, like if you're playing soccer and stuff, like you're doing side-to-side movement. So just making sure you're well-rounded and robust. Like, trying to train robustness is hard.
So I look robust.
Everybody can be robust.
So how often do you guys do strength training?
I do it more than that. I also cross-train, so.
Yeah. So I had years of doing other sports. I didn't pick running until I graduated from college in 2009. Until then, actually my focus was Nordic skiing, and I did a lot of strength in there. Since I became a runner, I'm trying to make up for all that time I wasn't a runner, and so I'm having a slightly different strategy now where I'm trying to be less robust. I'm trying to slim down as much as possible, shed every ounce that I don't need. That was from my skiing days, so I'm a little bit different. But at the same time, at my pace, I'm not going to do this for a long time, right? And so I'm trying to get to that spearhead as opposed to continuing doing it for fun. So as Sarah can say, I walk around like an 80-year-old